Hey everybody, Aaron from PubSafe. Today I was going to talk about a couple different types of trackers, satellite trackers, EPIRBs, if you will, communicators of different types, and talk a little bit about what goes into these and how are these pertinent to search and rescue. We all know that anytime that there's a major disaster, cell phone communication goes down for at least a couple days, and we have to try to figure out how do we communicate during that time period. So what makes, perhaps this unit better than this unit or different from, this unit? So I wanted to run through a couple things that you may not know about these things. I'm not going to get into technical specifications. You can go online and read those specific things. But I have used all of these devices, and I have some opinions that may provide a little bit of insight to help you and your team choose which one of these three devices, or perhaps none of these devices, are going to be the right fit for you. So you may want to go out and look for something else. But let me start with talking about how these things communicate. And once you understand that, then you can kind of start to frame a decision on what's going to work best for you. First of all, any GPS device is nothing but a receiver. The GPS satellites are in the sky and they're transmitting a beam. And if you think about like an FM radio station, the radio in your car is a receiver, and the FM radio station is beaming signals that your antenna in the vehicle picks up. Well, that's the same with GPS satellites. They are beaming signals to a receiver, and when you get signals from multiple satellites, then you're able to triangulate, or the device is able to triangulate the position of the device on the earth, right? So you have to have at least 3 satellites, and the more satellites, the more accurate that you can get. Most of these devices will be accurate down to somewhere between 1 and about 10 meters, which is more than enough for the type of search and rescue applications that we're talking about. Number 2 is you have to try to decide, what do you want to do with the device? Do you want to be able to send a lot of short messages? So something like this with this type of keyboard is going to be a lot easier than something with no keyboard, which means you have to do the old scroll up, hit twice, to select different letters and numbers and things like that. So it takes a lot longer to send messages off this. Almost all of these devices offer pre-configured messaging, which is great. It shortens the texting, the message creation time. It can somewhat manage the data, things of that nature. And, with these two devices, those messages are programmed onto or transferred onto the devices, because these are standalone devices, right? There's no mobile app necessary, but you do have to get the messages on there prior to going to the field. This device here app will connect via Bluetooth to a mobile phone if you have the app, and you can do some things back and forth that way, in addition to having a full functioning keyboard and other features. So this one gives you a lot of flexibility. This one you have to hook to the computer before going out. I'm sure there are models where there's Bluetooth and it connects to an app as well that you can transfer things, but that's a bit of a process. And then you have this particular device from ZOLEO, which can operate standalone, but you can see there's no keyboard on it. So if you want to do messaging, you really have to have the mobile app on your mobile phone. And there are some pros and cons to this device configuration as well. But before we get into that, let's talk about how these devices communicate. And what happens is they get information from the GPS satellites. And then if you want to send information to someplace else, i.e. you want to share your position with somebody through a map sharing link, which all of these devices offer, or you want to send a message back, then you have to transmit from the device up to a satellite, which then routes the information back down to a dish, and then that routes it to a location online that becomes accessible, or it forwards an email or whatever. Basically, it goes from the satellite to a dish to the manufacturer based on the IMEI number of the device, and then the manufacturer does whatever your account is set up to do, i.e. map share, forward to SMS messaging, or things of that nature for emergency contacts, et cetera, et cetera. So the satellite communication piece is really important to understand. First of all, I have seen in a medical emergency situation where somebody stood out in an open field in Colorado and had a sat phone and tried to make a phone call, and it did not go through, right? It just wouldn't work. So, the idea that you are 100% going to have communication is not true, right? Satellite communication is very sensitive to line of sight. So where you can take your cell phone and you can talk inside your house, because at towers, maybe a mile, 2 miles, 5 miles away, you are not going to talk inside your house using a satellite telephone. You have to have direct line of sight to the sky. And when you are in vegetation, that's a problem. Pine trees with the pine sap in there are more restrictive than other types of, thin-leafed materials that don't have a lot of sap. So there are a variety of options that you can choose from, but there are a lot of things that you need to understand about satellite communication. Okay, let's talk about the difference between Globalstar and Iridium and how the satellites that are circling the globe play into this. With Globalstar, the satellites remain in a fixed position as the world turns. So those satellites provide a very predictable footprint or coverage area. There are gaps in that coverage area, as you can see in the coverage map. And as the world turns, those satellites stay in the same place all the way around through a complete rotation. If you're operating in these areas that have no coverage, then you're just simply not going to be able to communicate at those times. Globalstar was really kind of designed to operate for IoT devices, asset trackers, vehicle trackers, that type of machine type tracking. And with that, you may have a cargo ship that sails through an area that has no coverage because it's in the middle of the Pacific, but it's not a big deal. So knowing where you operate in relation to where Globalstar provides coverage is hugely important. And obviously Globalstar is putting satellites in a position where they're covering the vast majority of the footprint of their customers and people in general. In Middle Africa, there's probably not a lot of satellite communication customers there. Globalstar is popular with oil and gas companies and others that need their type of communication. With Iridium, what you have are satellites that are actually moving around the Earth at about 17,000 miles an hour. And you can see from the video depiction that they are not stationary over a single point on the globe. So you get better coverage with Iridium anywhere on the world. But what happens is sometimes you get a situation where you may have to wait for the next satellite to come by because it's not a permanent dead spot, but it might be a temporary dead spot. With both of these systems, I have experience where it can communicate quickly, or it can take 25, 30 minutes to get a message off, which in an emergency, that's a virtual lifetime. Is there a way to improve that? I don't know. Making sure that you're out in the wide open is the number one way to do it. You don't have a canyon effect, you don't have buildings, you don't have vegetation, things like that are going to provide some level of obstacles to the direct line of sight that's required for communication with the satellite constellation. So study up the constellations and decide, what your requirements are, where you're going to operate, and then start looking for equipment that meets your operational requirements and your coverage requirements, and that will really help you narrow down the type of device that you're interested in looking at for your organization. The other big thing about Globalstar versus Iridium is that with Globalstar, what happens is they transmit the message one time, actually twice. They send the same message gets sent twice in hopes that it gets through. What's not happening on Globalstar is the constellation is not returning a message to the device to confirm that the message actually was transferred and made it through. That can be problematic if your communication is requires something special, or obviously in a life and death situation. If you're responding to a disaster and search and rescue, as long if your life's not in danger but you're trying to do status updates, if a message doesn't get through, it's not the end of the world. If you are trying to effect a rescue in a very remote area and someone is in serious health condition, that may be more of a consideration. And then with the Iridium constellation, it will send a reply from the constellation back to the device, say, hey, look, your message made it and it made it through. So, some of these devices, may do things in the background that you may not know, i.e. like this one sends the message twice. Maybe it sends it again at another time that you don't even know about, or it doesn't indicate, something of that nature. But the positive confirmation back from the Iridium satellite to the device, even though you may not see that, you may, depending on the device, like on this one, you may not know that it didn't. If you get a message back saying, hey, message not delivered or whatever, then you don't have anything to read this on except your cell phone if you happen to have that with you. But on this, you might get a message undelivered on the device, which would tell you, hey, I need to try again, I need to move, something of that nature. So although this one offers lots of capabilities with the texting and things like that, which is great, this has a benefit to how it communicates. The next thing I'll say is, because I have used all three of these, and this is the one I just picked up and just started playing with recently, but I have used this on backpacking trips in remote areas, and it has worked fine. I used this one for years, and it worked fine. As long as you got a lot of preset messages in here and you don't have to peck things out on the keyboard, that's great. The plus of this device is you've got navigation included, where on something like this, that screen's not really super conducive to navigation. Just really kind of depends on what your needs are, right? So, and then you go to this new device, which I'm not sure how long this device has been out. My communication with them has been kind of, I would say, on and off. I actually contacted them to do an integration into PubSafe, and I got virtually nothing back from them. So I don't know if they don't have an integration capability like they say they do online. But I like the form factor. If you're just going to clip this on your pack and walk, this is a pretty solid unit, right? You can use the unit without the mobile app. You've got the ability to set up tracking before you leave. So when you power it on, you can track this device every 12 minutes or every couple hours, I think, depending on how much battery you want to consume and how long you're going to be gone, things of that nature. But you can also Bluetooth this to their mobile app, and then you can basically freeform text off of the mobile app, and it will default the messaging and the communication to the least expensive option available, i.e. Wi-Fi would be first because that's free. Number two would be cellular, and then if those two aren't available, then it goes to satellite communication. So, that's a nice feature. The mobile app on this isn't up to par, in my opinion. The mapping capabilities, map share, they do little screenshots of maps. There's no web map. These two companies here have, much better interfaces. This one, Spot from Global Star has the best, in my opinion. It is on par. I would give it an A. inReach with Garmin and the size of the Garmin as a company, I would give a C-. I really get frustrated trying to work with this, with this platform. The software's outdated, in my opinion. The look and feel is not as good. It's not as intuitive online, for this platform, but could just be me. So, if you're really going to make the investment in some technology for your team for operational applications, I would actually suggest that you buy a couple of these, or find people that have these, and then really kind of dive into them to see which one's going to work best for you. It's a small price to pay, $200 on Amazon. I think this one's a little bit more. This one was $150, and you had to buy 3 months of service, which I bought the unlimited plan just for testing. It was $50 a month, 3-month minimum, and $25 activation fee. After that, you can put it into warm status if you want. And, most of these will have a warm status, so you can pay $5 a month just to keep the device active. And then, kind of turn it on or tune it up with a bigger plan during a disaster as you see one coming, or hurricane season comes, like we are seeing here in June of 2023. So you've got, a couple of these things. So hopefully this sheds a little bit of light on the types of things that you're going to need. I mean, really what you're looking at is needing something like this for a day or two, or maybe 3 or a week tops, because getting cellular communication is the priority. And, the cellular companies have done a much better job. They've got mobile units, vans, trucks, things like that, where they go into an area, they set up a temporary tower. Now they've got cell phone coverage for, 15 square miles, which is great. Back when I went to Puerto Rico, after Hurricane Maria, they were just starting to try to figure out how to solve this problem. They were putting up some balloons and things like that. And they hadn't gotten that far, but now, this many years later, they are much more advanced. They've got more resources. They want to be able to provide connectivity to their customers and participate in the disaster response. It's a good public image effort on their part, and they should be applauded for that. So, if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up in the comments on this. Otherwise, go out and get the PubSafe mobile app. We've got a free version of it. and you can see how that works. We are hoping to do an integration with one of these devices, so hardcore search and rescue groups can actually at least share their location information as they go into some of these areas without coverage. Eventually, we'll get into bringing in the text communication as well, as we see some demand for that. But start with the PubSafe mobile app, and then if you're an NGO, look at the PubSafe portal, which communicates with the mobile app for dispatching, communication, tracking volunteer hours, impromptu search party organization and management. We've got a contact manager, all kinds of things that are in the PubSafe portal designed specifically for NGOs to be more effective and efficient in the response to disasters and emergencies. And the last thing I'll say about PubSafe, the mobile app isn't just for disasters. I mean, you could use PubSafe if you've got a flat tire, if you go kayaking and get lost, if you're skiing and fall into a hole, if you've got a dead battery, you need a jump start, post-tornado, post-wildfire, getting help moving animals, whatever the case is. The vision is that we have a central platform for all citizens globally, and we do have global users, for communities that are underserved, that are underfunded, that need a communication platform in Western Australia to talk about, floods and wildfires. They could use the PubSafe platform to do that. So thank you and good luck to you this hurricane season in the United States. For those of you around the world, thank you for paying attention, and hopefully this video will help you choose a way to improve your communication within your search and rescue team. Have a good day.